everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sweet Melba. And I wanted to do this first video after my introduction video. So if you haven't seen that, you can take a look at that. But for this video, I kind of wanted to focus specifically on probably the one topic for us that is most prevalent is our planning for retirement. And certainly, you don't have to be in your 50s to start doing that. You should have done it a lot sooner. But, and I think in your 50s, it really becomes a little more apparent. And as I mentioned in my intro video, I consider us semi-retired. And we kind of developed a 7-year plan for full retirement. And I guess it kind of breaks down around 7 steps, really. So I thought I would share some of that, kind of what our thought process has been, some of the things we've done, and just kind of what we've done and how we continue to move forward in that direction. So as I said, I consider us semi-retired, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but this is our 3rd year of being semi-retired, and we started the process in 2022, and then my husband retired in 2023. And it has been an adjustment, as changing finances significantly would be, but it's also been an attitude adjustment, as well as we're taking the steps to be as prepared as possible and being confident in the steps that we have worked through, both on our own and with our financial planner, to get to this particular point. And again, feeling confident that we're moving in the right direction, and that the choices and priorities we have set, we've been able to accomplish so far. So I wanted to share a little bit of our background, kind of where we were at and where we're at, and then get into the steps that we kind of followed. So we have been married for 18 years this year, 2025, and we do not have any children, and that was a decision by choice when we first met. So that's another story that we talked about that. But anyway, so we don't have that. So that certainly, changes the financial scenario as well. And my husband was in the public sector for 22 years before he retired. And I have been working for 28 years in the nonprofit sector. The last 20 years of those 28 years, I have been self-employed, owning my own company, which is a small shop, just me. I never intended to have employees, but still working with nonprofits and being able to really tailor the type of consulting that I do for nonprofits. Over the years, that has changed, so I've had a lot of flexibility, and that was really why I wanted to have my own business, so that I would be able to control the amount of hours that I worked, as well as the type of projects that I offered support and work on for organizations. Both my husband and I have bachelor degrees. My husband's degree was in environmental resource engineering, and my degree was in history with a minor in business administration. We began planning for retirement and saving to retirement for about 21 years. So pretty soon we got into our fields, we started doing that. My husband, being in the public sector with local government, had the benefit of a pension. And I know that changes the whole scenario with retirement, but he was fortunate in having that. But that was part too of his career decision and where he wanted to be. I did not, and so I was contributing to my own individual retirement accounts as I was working. But again, we were able to contribute to those accounts for about 21 years. In addition to the retirement accounts, we were also putting money towards savings, and that would ebb and flow. We would put stuff in it. We would spend stuff out of it, making decisions as to what we wanted to take out of those savings accounts. And we still have that today. And we really fell into the typical middle class. We were probably a little higher than middle, but not at the high end, so in that range. So not overly wealthy in that respect, but we lived very comfortably. And as we semi-retired and as we look at retirement, that's our goal, is to live comfortably, not excessively, and to really enjoy the opportunities and the experiences we're able to have within a reasonable budget. So those have really been our goals. So our decision to semi-retire really came to our awareness that we were at that point when my husband was eligible to retire. And we knew that that would be in 2022. So that was really our year of really focusing on where we were and where we wanted to go at that particular point in time, and were we going to look at retirement for the following year. So with his pension and years of service, we were able to make the decision to retire with 60% of his highest compensation over 3 years, and also had the benefit of a significant portion of our health care, both for him, almost 100%, and then a significant portion for me as well would continue on into retirement when he decided to take that pension. So those were critical points for us. Our other consideration for retirement was where we were in our careers, and really, again, being fortunate in working in careers that we wanted to, in the fields that we wanted to, but being later on in our careers, really wanting to, in my case, continue to select the type of projects that I wanted to work on, the type of work I wanted to do with organizations, and for my husband to really be able to pick and choose the type of projects he wanted to work on from an engineering standpoint. And could he continue to do that after retiring? So those were our considerations. And of course, what comes with owning your own business, knowing that, like I say, I've been doing it for 20 years, is the flexibility. And the level of stress significantly drops. So those were all appealing to my husband in his consideration of what he would do after he retired. He didn't want to not work, but considering what that would be. So the consideration was for him to start his own small business, which we decided would be something that he would focus on prior to his retirement and getting everything set up, so that he felt comfortable in that respect before he actually decided to retire. And then as for most retirees, I think the ability to have that financial freedom to be able to decide how you're going to spend your money, where you're going to spend your time, whether that's hobbies or volunteering or travel. In our case, we really wanted to travel more. We traveled while my husband was working full time, but we really wanted to travel for longer periods of time. And that's difficult to do when you're employed full time. So that was a consideration as well. So that financial freedom, flexibility, and really making our decisions as to what we worked on, when we worked on them, and how we spent our time. So those were key considerations for us, looking at when we wanted to move into that next step for us. So how did we do this? So as I mentioned in the beginning, we really kind of focused on a tentative kind of maybe a 7-year plan, and we kind of narrowed it down to about 7 steps. So again, I wanted to share some of those steps with you if you might be considering looking at semi-retiring or fully retiring. So hopefully these will be helpful for you. So the first step was really understanding our finances. And we had always tracked our finances in an accounting program. I also have a lot of finance background. So for me, I've always used QuickBooks. So I continue to use that. And so we were always tracking all of our expenses. So step one was really knowing how we were spending our money and looking at, the last 3 years at that time, what our averages were. A lot of times you'll hear about, the split with your expenses, your needs, your wants, your savings, or paying off debt. So we kind of put it in that context to see how much were we spending in those various categories. The averages that we had, that we came up with, were our needs were in the mid 60s range. Our wants were in the low 30% range. Our savings was in the 7 to 8% range, somewhere in there. And then of that area, in the want area, we were only spending about 2% of our budget on travel at that time. So that was a key area for us that we wanted to be able to increase that. And in order to do that, we were going to have to drop the wants in other areas and see if we could adjust some of our needs. So that was really step one for us, knowing how we were spending our money on an average basis, and where do we go next? So step two for us was coming up with the semi-retired budget, which would be for our 2023 year. So we started working on that in 2022, on what that looked like. We knew with taking the pension that at 60%, we were looking at a shortfall of 40% from a gross standpoint on income. But with my husband wanting to start his business, we knew there would be a little more income there with his business starting up as well. So again, we kind of knew where our income was going to be. We knew what that fixed income would be. My income is fairly steady, so we knew what that was. And so we made a slight adjustment for his starting a new business from an income basis as well. So we made some significant changes to our planned semi-retired budget for the first year. From our needs and going through all of our expenses, what could we cut back on? We were estimating about a 23% drop in our expenses for what we considered to be our needs. And one area in particular that just kind of developed, and I mentioned this a little bit in my first intro video, we had pets. And as many of you know who have pets, those expenses can be high sometimes for vet bills, and our dogs were older, so we did have vet bills and medications and whatnot. But both of our dogs passed away. So those expenses for pets was an area that we no longer had that expense, because we had decided, because we wanted to travel more, from our perspective, having pets really wasn't going to fit with that model, and decided that for now we were not going to get any additional pets. Not that we won't ever, but for this particular period in our time, we were not. So that was one area that we saw a cut in expenses that was helpful in that needs area. Our wants was a big one. We were estimating about 40%, maybe a little over 40%, that we were going to need to cut in that area in order to get our budget numbers all lined up. So some of the big areas that we cut back on were food, and especially dining out. So, as most of you are probably familiar with that as well, dining out can add up, and even more so now. But, back then it was still expensive. And we did that a lot. We were tired at the end of the day. We didn't want to cook, so we would go out. So we had a budget there that was fairly high. So we had some room to cut that expense. We also looked at our entertainment expenses. Could we cut something there, especially from a cable standpoint? Cable was pretty expensive. So we looked at that and we did make some cuts on that. So that was nice to be able to do that. One of our big areas was our hobbies. We were spending quite a lot on hobbies. And so we really looked at that and said, we can cut a big significant amount in this area. So, and a lot of the things we had bought for our individual hobbies were not necessarily things that were depleted. For example, puzzles or games. So they weren't that we no longer had the hobbies. We just didn't necessarily need to continue to buy more and more stuff related to those hobbies. So we saw a real area that we could cut expenses. So that helped us significantly. One of the other areas that we looked at was autos, and that kind of split for us between needs and wants. We also had other multiple vehicles that were not everyday vehicles, but that we were having on insurance that, we were driving a few times a year. So we really looked at that and how we could cut back on that. But the one area that we didn't want to cut back on, as I said, was our travel. We wanted to be able to bump that travel percentage of our overall budget up. So we were able to do that because we were able to cut those other expenses, especially in the wants area, and cutting those to allow us to do that. And one other area, the savings. We kind of made the decision that we were going to cut back on our savings, that we weren't going to be contributing as much to our retirement accounts. We would continue to have a savings for emergencies and unexpected expenses above our budget that came up, auto, things of that nature. But we were continuing. So we did cut our savings down, probably in the range of about 45% was our cut there. But we felt comfortable with that, given the savings that we already had. So we were able to do some cutting there. So step 3 for us was working with a financial planner. We had done some outreach to try and meet with a couple people that we knew, business associates and whatnot, and really find one that we were both comfortable with. So just a suggestion from that realm is finding an advisor that both you and your spouse, partner, whatever the situation may be, are both comfortable with. So with the financial planner, we continue to meet with them at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. We can send emails and whatnot when we have questions about different things. So that's really nice. But we stay up with them on a regular basis, reevaluating our investments, our budgeting plans, what has changed. It's always great. They always ask questions that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. It's like, oh, yeah, we did have a change there. So it's really great to work with an advisor. Trying to do this on your own is just too tough, I think. It puts more stress on you. I mean, you're not an expert in this field in most cases. If you are, that's different. But rely on a professional who can give you advisement and steer you in the right direction. Again, asking the right questions and whatnot. So that's a key piece is the financial planner, I believe. So then step 4. Step 4, I'm not sure what you want to call it. It's the stepping off, the jumping off, making the decision that this is what we were going to do, that we felt confident in our initial plans for the semi-retired status, and that we just needed to pull the trigger, whatever you want to use, and do it. And give the notice of the retirement, and that the new business that my husband was starting was all lined up. All the legal documents were set up, all that, the website, all that kind of stuff was ready to go, so he could start doing that right off. So it's a hard thing to do, even when, as I mentioned, having a pension is a game changer in terms of the overall. That's a reliable source. I mean, there's decisions you have to make about what type of pension you're going to take. Are you taking a lump sum? Are you taking a single payer? I mean, there's a variety of scenarios there. But that does change. But even still making that decision and saying, I'm giving notice and I am retiring to move on to something else. That's a hard thing to do. But again, we felt confident in our plan. We were confident in our advisor, but it's a hard thing to do to pull the trigger and say, okay, we're doing it. But there's also a huge relief off your shoulders when you do. And I have heard so many people say that, you know, I wish I would have retired sooner. I wish I would have made the decision sooner, planned sooner. So there's certainly a sense of relief with that. So step five, and that's really where we're at right now at this point in time, because step five for us was the monitoring, tracking the budget, analyzing and adjusting. And so that's really what we did in 2023 when my husband, he's retired in the spring, and in 2024 and in 2025. So we tweaked things a little bit. We saw where we had some challenges in 2023. We tweaked things for 2024 and even more so in 2025. So we're really at that step five is kind of an ongoing arrangement, really, of monitoring your finances and your goals and your priorities, how life is changing, and things of that nature. And tracking your expenses isn't always fun. I enjoy it personally. My husband doesn't really enjoy that, so he's more than happy for me to do all of that. But we review everything monthly, and for me, I like doing it. I try to keep up on it once a week. I call it Money Monday. That's the day that I get everything up to date. You know, what did we spend the week before? I look at the bank accounts, update the information in my QuickBooks. If you don't have QuickBooks, you can do this in Excel, and there's lots of other programs out there that you can look at, or do it in, a notebook. But I do that. I try to do it once a week. I'm pretty good about that. Sometimes my schedule is such that I have to kind of change that up. But anyway, so we track all of that. And to try and make it a little more fun, there are different things you can do. I know a lot of people like the envelopes approach where you're putting whatever's allocated for your different spending categories in envelopes. And when it's gone, it's gone. Or it gives you a heads up, oh, I've only got $100 left in here. So you're planning ahead of time. So we tried that, and that it wasn't that much fun, and it didn't work too well for us. So many of our expenses are set up on automatic payments, so the envelope piece wasn't quite working. So we tried to adjust that actually a little bit. We had it had been after the holidays, and we had been playing Monopoly, and I thought, what if I made like Monopoly type money to put in the envelopes, even though the money's coming out of the automatic withdrawals? Maybe you could still kind of moving it, because when it's out of sight, it's out of mind kind of thing, right? So we tried that, and that was kind of fun. We did that for about a month and a half, and then it wasn't fun anymore. So we just went back to what worked, which was keeping our accounting tracking up to date and monitoring it on a monthly basis to see how we're doing. And I can really monitor it weekly. If I see that we're really going over in an area, I can say, we probably need to adjust this early on rather than waiting a whole nother month. The thing that we started this year, though, in 2025, to better help us together track it on a real-time basis is we were looking for something on our phone. And we are using this year Budget Buddy. And we really like it. This is not an endorsement, paid endorsement or anything, but we've really found that it works for us. We do have the paid version. I want to say it's like $40 a year or something like that. But it allows us to both have it on our phone, and we can both add expenses. And where it's really helpful for us, because this is one of our challenge areas, is our food and dining out budget. We really cut that down, and we really need to monitor that for us. So doing that on our phone, on our Budget Buddy, has been really great this year, because we can see real time how much is left. Are we going to a steak dinner or are we going for pizza? So anyway, it really has helped. So you might consider something like that as well. And that's kind of fun because you look at it and what is this? But we track it for our gas. So the things that, everything's in there they can set up automatic payments on there as well. But you can really see it at any time you want to see it. So I really like that. My husband likes it as well. One of the other things this step 5 for us has been continuing to check our attitude about the whole process. Sometimes it can get a little daunting. You're tracking this and that, and especially when there's unexpected expenses, you're getting off track and you're kind of frustrated and whatnot. But I think for us is a reminder of all the things that we do have, that we're making these decisions to cut expenses in certain areas so that we have more in another area, obviously travel in our case, in doing that. So we need to continue to remind ourselves of that, that we're working towards a goal. And it's like with anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more comfortable it gets. And I think we're finding that. But there are still days when you're just like, ugh, I wish I could just go spend and not think about it, because that's what we were doing before 2022. We just kind of spent whenever we wanted to buy something. We weren't spending a lot on travel, but we were spending it on all this other stuff that we were able to go back and say, you know what? Do we really want to be spending that kind of money on that? That just doesn't make a lot of sense. So anyway, so again, I think there's periods all of us get a little frustrated, a little tired of the process, but you're working towards a goal. And I think you've got to keep reminding yourself of that. And so we try to do that as well. I did want to mention too, I think you have to have in your plans, whether you have a savings or some cushion in your budget, life happens. And, you know, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, I had to get all new tires on my SUV. And I was really disappointed about that. That was not in the car repair budget because my tires were in fine shape. But somehow I got 3 nails in the same tire over a course of about 4 months. So we couldn't repair the tire. We had to get all 4 new tires. That wasn't in the budget. Stuff like that happens. And in 2024, we had a positive thing. In 2024, there was an opportunity for my husband to do something he had been wanting to do for quite some time, which was with a buddy of his to be able to walk a portion of the Camino in Spain. And this was not in the travel budget. We had bumped up the travel budget, but it was not in the travel budget for that expense to do that. But that was one of those opportunities where life happens, opportunities come up, and we decided that was well worth taking some money out of savings for him to be able to go with his friend and do that trip. And it was magnificent. And so we evaluate those things, again, tires, you got to. Travel, you don't have to, but sometimes opportunities come up and you want to do that. So he was able to do that, and we were both really happy about that. We had to take some out of savings, but we planned to have enough in savings that if stuff came up, we could do that. So just keep in mind that the budget never goes as planned, I don't think. There's always adjustments, and having those extra funds, if you do, are helping to build that on a monthly basis, which we continue to do with our savings, allows us to be able to make some of those decisions. So as I said, we are still on step 5, and for 2025, our current layout of our needs, wants, savings, if we're sticking with that kind of a format, we are at 66% on our needs, so about what we normally had been of our overall budget is about 66%. Our wants are at 29%, and our savings is at 5%. So we're still kind of within that framework that we had been in on those percentages, but the overall expense budget is much smaller. So, but we're still kind of like in that ballpark. I'm looking forward to sharing. I'll probably share monthly kind of how we're continuing to do this year. This is our 3rd year into the semi-retired status, how we're doing, what's changing. And then also this year, we are going to start down the road of looking at the full retirement. And I initially said in the beginning that we were looking at possibly a 7-year time frame for that. So that is one of the areas that we're going to be looking at a little bit more starting this year. So that looking forward to the full retirement is our step 6, is to look at how we've been doing. But for us, the big key too are those changes in our income with full retirement and the expenses. So I will continue to provide some updates, again, just how our 2025 year is going. So I hope you'll subscribe to the channel so you'll get notices of that as I have new updates and whatnot and how things are going. And I think that's helpful. I know it's helpful to me. As I say, I watch other YouTube channels, and it's always good to hear other people's perspectives, their challenges, their successes. It's reassuring. It opens some ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of, things of that nature. So I hope I can provide a little bit of that to people as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the video today and would consider subscribing and following along in this process of us moving from semi-retired to fully retired. So maybe that's going to be 2027. We could have some portion of that in 2026. Again, we'll kind of see how those different things come together. And so I look forward to sharing some of that information with you. And again, I hope you've enjoyed the video today. So thanks for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you soon. The next video, I think I'm going to get a little bit more of a fun topic. Although I love planning things, so finance planning is always fun to me. But something a little more fun for us 50-somethings that we can share. So I have a few things in mind. So I hope you'll join me then. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.